live now. All right, welcome back. We are game 3004 in the winter 2021 semester, and it's week 6, part 2 of our broadcast. And we're talking about a couple of issues. One thing is, again, if I looked at the schedule for today in terms of our lab, we're talking about Nav Mesh Components and how I can use them instead of making a Nav Mesh, baking it ahead of time. I can use something called Nav Mesh Components. I talked about this last time. Really quick, how to do a health bar in 3D, billboarding, that kind of stuff. Destructible objects. Part of being of having destructible objects is you need some kind of health bar that goes or some health system that's attached to them. Destructible objects can be animate or inanimate, and then of course the selection. How do I do object selection when it comes to adding things into my inventory or even breaking items? When I select something. So there's different ways of doing this. I want to try and tackle these 4 topics this week. And let's start with Nav Mesh Components. So in that, we're going to start with the starter. The starter is Lab 4 starter, which I put up on Blackboard. Lab 4 starter is really, if I go back to our GitHub link, we're starting with Lab 3B Final. That's what it is, Lab 3B Final. And I'm going to make a new one right now for us, which is, again, game 3004 in the winter 2021 semester, and it's Lab 4B Final. That's what it's going to be called. All right, so that is the final version that I'm going to be updating as we go. I'm going to grab this link here, and I'm going to put it up on Blackboard for you guys. So let's see, hopefully you guys can do this part. So let's do that. So this is Lab 4 Final, all right? So hopefully that'll be good, and I'll put that along with your Lab 4 starter way up here. All right, so that is the your 2 things. Let's start off with bringing Lab 4 starter in, and I've already done that. So I've kind of started off with, I'm just going to go into a couple of things here. So I'm going to pull up my desktop as we start. And we're into game 3004. You guys should have this one when you pulled it down, Lab 3B Final. I'm going to unzip it and extract it. And Lab 3B Final, I'm going to call this Lab 4B Final. Actually, what it should be is Lab or Week 6B is what it should be. And I'll put up the same link that I have from before. So this is the one. I'm going to be using GitHub for my, or my command prompt for GitHub, again, as I go forward. So again, CD space, and then I'm going to tab into Week 6B. And I'll say git init, git add dot, git commit -m, and I'll say initial commit. And then I want to push it up on a GitHub link, which I just made, this one. I'm going to grab the last 3 lines of code here, copy them, go back to my command prompt, right click, and paste. And then that should push everything up to our Lab 4B Final. All right, very good, very good. So we've got that going. And now what I want to do is, let's refresh. I want to use our Unity hub. I want to add in Lab or Week 6B right here and select the folder. It's going to bring this up, and I'm going to launch it. Let's see where we were last week, and let's talk about some things we can do this week to make it better. And this is as we move forward. And this is taking a sweet time. For those people watching on YouTube, skip until this is done, right? All right, so we've pulled up our project, which is the starter, and I'm going to go into scenes and double click on main. That's where I'm going to start today. And what we had last time when we started in main, if I press play, is we had a very simple scene where I have my enemy, I have a little bit of an obstacle there, and you can see that as I'm moving through the scene, my enemy should be trying to track me. There he is, right? So that's pretty cool. But one of the challenges we had is it wouldn't be able to go up the stairs. And what we did last day was we said, okay, cool. Well, let's select this level and let's go to each of the tiles. And if I look at the navigation, it was crazy. It was something that looked like this. We did like off mesh links and everything, and it automatically generated all this stuff. And it was pretty crazy. And I kind of said that, you know what, this is okay. And if you had a terrain, maybe you want to do it this way. But instead of doing it like this, you know, and this is pre-baking everything, especially if you're doing procedural generation, what might be a lot better than this is the new component system. So I want to use the new component system in this time around instead. So I need to do a couple of things to prep. One thing is, let's get rid of all the other tiles instead of these two. Tile 1 and tile 2 I'm going to keep, but I'm going to get rid of these ones here in the scene. So let's get rid of all those. I'm also going to go into my navigation where it says bake, and I want to clear the navigation mesh. All right, so I want to do that. So again, I'm down to two tiles again, tile 1 and tile 2. I have some stairs in there. I have the enemies. I'm going to remove them for now. So I'm just going to remove all the enemies, delete. They're already prefabbed anyway. And the pillar, let's get rid of that, delete. All right, and then what I want to do is to prep. So this is just a prep, is I want to move the stairs, and I want to move it so it's against this tile here. So again, I'm going to get the stairs, and it's one object. I want to prefab it. So I want to go into resources, prefabs, and I want to prefab the stairs. So just drag this in. Okay. One thing to note is the stairs also have a you know, kind of a navigation area, but we've just cleared it, so there's nothing that's part of the stairs. Let's rewire the stairs a little bit so they kind of sit alongside this tile for now. We're going to have to do this a couple of times. So one thing to do is to rotate it across the y-axis, let's say 180 degrees, and let's bring the stairs kind of closer to the this part of the tile, as well as it looks like they're hovering. Let's bring them closer to the ground. So again, make them so it's like right against the ground. So just like something like that. Doesn't have to be perfect. That's all we have. We have stairs. We have two tiles, tile 1 and tile 2. This is tile 2. And maybe bring this a little bit to the left so it's kind of centered. There we go. So if we pre-bake stuff, there's disadvantages. The disadvantage of pre-baking is what we need to do, and this is something we need to do, is we need to plan our entire level and then bake everything afterwards. And yes, there are ways of doing it so it's done at runtime, but if you're procedurally generating, or if you're doing something where you are a tower defense game, as a good example, and you're placing down a tower and you want your enemies are to be kind of, you know, kind of, you want to rebake or you want to add stuff to the level where your enemies change their direction or whatever, then you want a different way of doing things. So one thing we can do is we can use the component system. And if you notice here in the navigation window, and again, you can get that by going to Window, AI, Navigation. That'll bring up the navigation window, which I parked. I kind of docked here on the right-hand side next to the inspector. You can put this wherever you like. Notice that there it says, learn instead about the component workflow. If you click this component workflow, it takes you to this GitHub site. And this is what I've put up on here under Nav Mesh Components in Blackboard. So that is what you can download. I've gone ahead and downloaded it already. All right, and it looks like this, Nav Mesh Components Master. When I unzipped it, I get this Nav Mesh Components Master folder with some assets that I have in here. All right, so I want you to come to this point. Please download the Nav Mesh Components project from Unity Technologies website. All right, their GitHub repo. And then when you pull it down, I want you to unzip it, please, and expose the assets. And I want two folders that I really want are the Gizmos folder and the Nav Mesh Components folder, those two. Okay. And when you're ready, check mark if you're with me, because this is the next part I want to go to. Okay, Russ, please check mark. Michael, thank you. Be a couple more people and we're ready to go. Hopefully you guys some of you are watching. This is kind of key for the guys who are doing tower defense as well as procedural generation. I guess Russ and Michael, you guys are good examples of that. All right, thank you for that. So now if you've downloaded the example, what I want to do is go to Unity and I want to open this up and I want to go to assets. So the main folder, the main root of the folder, and I want to drag and drop Gizmos and Nav Mesh Components folders from the stuff that I've downloaded into my assets folder, like so. Okay, so there's Nav Mesh Components, and there is Gizmos, and now I have additional functionality that I didn't have before. That's all you need to do to make sure that that project works. Okay. So now that I have Gizmos and Nav Mesh Components, I want to talk about how to do this. I can add a Nav Mesh Surface, which is different than what we've done before, as a component, right, to an object. So let's take a look at that. Let's say, for example, I have tile 1, which is this one. And tile 1, I'm going to add in, I'm just going to hide everything but the add component button right now. So it's just compress all these, right? I'm going to say add component, and if I put in Nav Mesh Surface, you see that that is now a component that comes up, Nav Mesh Surface. If I press enter, then what I can do for this Nav Mesh Surface is I can attach it as a component, right, to the object, as opposed to using a Nav Mesh, the Nav Mesh window. All right, so this is kind of neat the way they did it. There are some options that I want you to look at. One of them is what agent type that you're going to be affecting. You can make multiple agent types. The one that we see here is humanoid, but inside of the navigation window, under agents, you can create as many agents as you'd like. Here we just have one, but you can click the plus and add in other agents that you want to do, things that are flying, or maybe other things that are lower to the ground with a different height, and a bunch of other details here. So that is the agent that is being affected. Let me go back to the inspector. So that is that. I have collect objects. So collect objects means that which objects, how are you going to apply the mesh to the objects? There are two options: all, that means everything in the scene; volume, or children. If I choose volume, then it really gives us this, an actual volume that I can apply the nav mesh to. If I choose children, that means anything that is a child of this object will have the nav mesh applied. Let's go back to all for a second and show you what that looks like. If I click all, that means everything, including everything in the scene. If I click on bake, it's going to create a nav mesh, but it looks like it's going to the wrong things. Well, actually what it's doing is it's adding a nav mesh to the normal of the objects. And because these two objects that I brought into the scene come from Blender, and because Blender has a Z up instead of a Y up, the normal is on the Y axis, okay? Which is kind of weird. And that's how it should be. It should be on the Y axis for us too, but this is rotated, right? So how do we combat that? First of all, let's clear that. And if I select children, then children, if I bake it again, you can see that it only goes on the children of the object that this component is on. So this is the second option. And let's look at the third option. The third option, if I go to volume, I can expand the volume to include both objects or more than one object. So let's do that. So right now the volume is X, Y, and Z, 10 by 10 by 10. Let's make it so that on the X-axis it is 20, and on the Z-axis it's 20, and on the Y-axis it's also 20. Not 2, 20, right? So you can see it kind of overlaps one part of this tile here and most of this tile here and the stairs. So if I click on bake, again, you can see that part of this tile was affected, and you can see that all of this is affected, but it's in the wrong spot. Okay, cool. So that is what volume does. Let's clear that. The other thing that we come down to is include layers, right? We have include layers are everything. We only want to include the ground. So we want to say nothing, and then we want to go just on the ground, anything that's marked as ground. Right now, this is marked as ground. This is marked as ground. And the stairs are not marked as ground. Let's mark them. So we'll say, let's mark this as ground, right? And then say, yes, change children. There we go. Let's just get rid of, sorry, I got to just close down Steam for a second. Otherwise, you're going to see a bunch of people coming in playing Valheim. All right, cool. So that is what's happening there. Okay, so we can see that that is ground for the stairs as well. And so you can only affect the things that you want to affect. So again, tile 1, we're affecting the ground. And the geometry we use to create the meshes, right now you can choose render meshes or physics colliders, it's up to you. Plus you have advanced options where, for example, the default area is walkable or not. You can override the voxel size and override the tile size. You can do both those two things as an example, okay? So there's other options here as well. We're not going to talk about too much. But here what I want to do is, instead of volume, I want to look at children. And if I click bake, it's only going to bake the ones that are part of the ground, but it's kind of wrong because the normals are messed up. How do I fix that? Well, we need some strategies. One is, let's remove the tiles from in here and put them out here for now. Okay, so tiles out here. And what I want to do is, I want to say that tile 1, which is tile with no stairs, I'm going to make into a prefab. And the way to do that is I'm going to right click and I'm going to go to create empty parent. So right click on the tile, click create empty parent, and then under empty parent, type in tile no stairs. That's the first tile. Okay. Now the thing is for this, that the tile itself, if you look at the transform, should be zeroed out relative to the parent. So let's do that right now. So we'll say the position is going to be 0, 0, and 0. And the parent, tile no stairs, should also be 0. Let's reset it. 0, 0, 0, right? So that's where it should be. And why? Because when I save this as a prefab, you don't want numbers in there, right? You want that all those things are zeroed out. Okay, this is cool. So I'm going to take my tile no stairs and I'm going to drag and drop it into the resources prefabs folder. Yay! There we go. Tile no stairs. Awesome. Let's delete it. Bye-bye, tile no stairs. Cool. And I've got tile with stairs. All right, tile with stairs. Let's put the stairs underneath the tile, but not inside the tile. All right, I want to keep them separate just in case I want to move it away or whatever. Well, it doesn't really matter. Let's say if I put the stairs as part of the tile, it doesn't matter. Okay, stairs are their own prefab anyway. It's right here, but tile and stairs are now bonded together. And what I want to do now is I want to do the same thing. I'm going to right click on the tile 2 and I want to say create empty parent. I'm going to call this parent tile with stairs. Tile with stairs. Awesome. Tile with stairs. Excellent. Let's reset this tile. So we'll say reset. It'll move us down to where it's going to be, 0, 0, 0. And in the tile, we'll also reset these numbers so that they are 0, 0, 0. This is important because if we don't do this, then it won't be at the middle tile. And that's what we want to do for this one. So tile 2, 0, 0, 0. Tile with stairs, 0, 0, 0. It's all zeroed out. Nice, nice, nice. And we're going to drag and drop this into the resources prefabs folder. Awesome. Nice. Now I want to take this. Let's rename tiles, the tiles transform. We're going to rename this into level. Let's make sure this, let's say this is our level. I want to drag in tile with stairs. And I want to drag in tile no stairs. And what I want to do with tile no stairs is I want to put it in the level. And I want to do some V-snapping. So let's connect these two together. So V-snap these two together. Whoop, there we go. Make sure you correct any abnormalities, like this Y value should be 0. Right? So I've got two tiles. Tile with stairs, tile no stairs. Okay? One thing I need to do with both of them, tile with stairs and tile no stairs, is I want to make them from an override. There's no overrides, but I want to make the default layer the ground layer and say yes to all children. Same thing with this one. I want to change the ground to the ground layer, say yes to all children to make sure that that's the layer that I'm going to be using. Now, instead of adding the surface to each individual tile, right? And again, tile 1 has this Nav Mesh Surface. Let's get rid of it. So remove component. And I want to go tile no stairs and apply that override. So I remove the component. So I don't have any component in tile in the tile 1. I want to add the component instead to level. So the containing object, okay? And I want to add component on the level, Nav Mesh Surface. I want to also choose, where it says collect all objects, I want to collect children. So children is what's going to be selected. And then, instead of everything, which is include layers, let's say nothing, and then let's select just ground. So include layers is just the ground layer. Okay, let's go over that again. So I removed from tile number 1 where I had my Nav Mesh Surface, I removed it. And I updated the prefab by using overrides, right? And then I went into my level, which is my containing object for both tile with stairs and tile no stairs. And I added the component there, the Nav Mesh Surface component. Then I changed the collect objects to children and the include layers only to ground. Now, what happens if I bake now? Bake. It's a beautiful thing, is what happens. It actually baked everything like so. Look at that. That's really nice, right? And what did it do? It actually combined those two together. They actually connect. There's one big mesh that's here, not like it was before. And also took care of the stairs, which is pretty cool. And let's put back our little agent. So we're going to put our little Nav Mesh agent in terms of our enemy. So again, I'm going to go to resources, prefabs, grab the enemy and put him on the scene. Let's make sure that he's actually, not sunken into the floor somewhere. Let's put him over there, right? Awesome. I don't care about seeing the markers. Let's turn the markers off. There we go. And where is the player? The player is kind of in the middle of the scene too. Let's make sure the player is in the right spot. There he is. And the player's spawn point is up here. Let's mark it a little bit, maybe make it red so we can see where the player spawn point is. Kind of in the top of the scene. It's going to drop into the scene. That's what's going to happen. Okay. And if everything goes well, then if I press play, then it's going to have a new surface. Let's run the game. Oh, there he is, right? And what about if I want to go up the stairs? Do the stairs work? Well, I have a bit of a problem with the AI, and I'll talk about this. It's not the Nav Mesh Surface anymore. It's the AI that has a problem. The AI right now is using all the enemies have a, I added in, for whatever reason, the rigid body. Let's get rid of the rigid body. So I'm going to go to rigid body and remove component for now. Okay. And what I want to do there in this, in the enemy itself is all enemies, they won't have a rigid body right now. We'll add it something else in later if you want them to fall. So if I try it now, and if I run, well, there's my AI. You can see that it's running nicely. I can't, he's blocking. And let's make it so, one more time, let's make it so my player can jump a little higher just to provide some challenge for the AI. So I can jump 4. There we go. And woohoo, jump. And I'm over here. And now what happens when I try and go up the stairs is my AI able to do it. And Yeah, I can, totally, right? And what about if I jump over here, though? Well, it doesn't know what to do. There is no path to getting to the top of the area. No path, right? So we have to make that path. The rigid body was the issue the whole time, yeah, because it kept on bouncing and all this kind of stuff. So we want to take the rigid body away. So that's pretty cool. So we took the rigid body away. We got the stairs working now, and everything else. But what I want to do is, what about making links? What if I'm over here on this part right here? How do I get the agent to kind of go over and jump over? I can't use off-mesh links anymore. I can't do that. If I'm using a new component system, then the new component system does not include baking. I'm not baking it here like I used to. Okay, I'm not doing that. I'm not adding off-mesh links. I don't do that either, all right? I'm actually adding links manually. And let me tell you how that works. So let's suppose I'm on tile number 1, all right? So again, I'm going to look at my level, and I'm going to look at tile no stairs. So tile no stairs is right here. This is tile equivalent to tile number 1, tile no stairs, right? By the way, why did I put the extra game object on top of the one that's inside? Because this game object, the normal, is up. And so when it bakes everything, the Nav Mesh Surface bakes properly, which is great, okay? So this is pretty cool. What I want to do is I want to create these links. So I want to go to tile no stairs. There's tile no stairs, and go back to my inspector and add a component called Nav Mesh Length. Nav Mesh Length provides a start and end point. It's like a line segment. That's what it is, right? So I've got my start and end. I know that these things are all 3 units tall. So let's move this, the start and end, to 3 meters above where it's at. Notice that if it connects with a surface, right, and I can click on each of these little knobs here. So if I click this one, you can see that this knob represents the endpoint, but there is no connection here unless it's connecting to a nav mesh. Let's move this back to 3. Move back to 3. Notice it becomes a circle. That's an indicator that all things are good. I want to move, this is the endpoint. Let's move the start point to something that makes sense. So the endpoint, I want to jump, let's say, from this platform to this platform. So again, let's move that over there. I want to jump from here to there. And I want to move this one from here, as an example, to here. And notice as soon as I move it on top of an area where there's a nav mesh, it connects. To make it more visible, instead of a little line like this, and there's a little arrow, let's give it a little bit of width. So I'm going to go from a width perspective, I want to go 1. So it almost like makes a path that you can physically see. Okay, there we go. That's the first link. It's called the Nav Mesh Link. Okay. By the way, Nav Mesh Link, let's go over it. Start and endpoints to the line segment. Okay. You can swap the endpoints. You can also align the transform to the endpoints. Don't do that because it's going to align the entire transform to those endpoints. Sometimes that's useful, sometimes it's not. Width is the width of the corridor that this is going to create, all right, as well as if it's bidirectional or not. If it's bidirectional, it means I can jump there and back. If I uncheck this, then it goes from start to end, and that's it. It doesn't allow you to come back. Sometimes that's useful for jumping down from a platform but not being able to jump back up to a platform, okay? And the area type that it's going to affect is walkable, okay? So that is your first link. Let's make another one. So I want to add another Nav Mesh link. Again, it adds it kind of to the relational to the mesh. I'm going to bring this up. So again, the start points and end points are going to be at 3 units. And let's add it somewhere else that makes sense, like maybe from here to here. All right, so again, I'm going to bring this over here. Once it becomes a circle, we're good. And we can also, it might help also if we're looking at it from a top-down view, right? So I like to look at it from a top-down view a lot of times because it can help me understand how I can jump from one platform to the other, right? As an example, so you can see that those become circles, and I want to move from one platform to the other. So there's a link there, and maybe I can have a few more. I can do one link from here to here, and a link from there to there, and a link from there to there, and I'm good to go. Now, this is a pretty far leap. I don't think I could probably make this in reality. So it's probably going to be from here to here, and then from here to here, right? So let's do that. So let's add a couple more links. So I add Nav Mesh Link. And again, I want to make this Nav Mesh Link start at 3 meters high or 3 units high. I want to take one of the endpoints here and I want to move it to where it's supposed to go. So let's say, it doesn't matter which one it is because we're going to make it bidirectional, right? And I want to move the other endpoint so that it is on the other side. And that's a pretty far jump. And you might say, Tom, I don't want to allow that. And I'm fine with that. That means you want to kind of make a link that goes from here to here. And maybe the only way you can get to this one is through this one. So kind of something that looks like this. Again, realistic. You want to make it so that it's a realistic kind of jump. That makes sense, right? From one point to the other point. Okay, let's do it again. So again, I'm just going to go down and we'll add another one, Nav Mesh Link. Again, we'll move this into 3.3. And then we can say that, well, what about from here to here? No, but what about from here to here? Yes. And we maybe do a link from there to there. These two are the closest areas. So I will select the endpoint, which I'll move over here. And then I'll move this endpoint over here, right? So something that looks like, they can even overlap, it doesn't matter. Because again, what you want to do is make it so that it's realistic, you know, from this. So now you have paths to go to all the places that are realistic. You can also make some areas here, which I'm not going to do, of unidirectional path. Actually, let's add one so they can jump down. Let's say from here, there's a nice big area. And let's suppose we want them to be able to jump down the Nav Mesh, the Nav agent into this little tile here. So again, I can add a Nav Mesh Link. Again, modify this to 3.3. And then I'll move one of those back down to 0 in a second. And I want to get the start point. So the start point, right? And you can see where the start point is. It gives you the x-axis. So I want to say that the start point will be there. Here's the end point. I'm just aligning this right now, right? So the start point will start at the top here, but the end point will actually be at the bottom. So I'll just go, 0. And then you can see that that is a link that goes from this down to the floor, right? Again, lots more control here in terms of the way it's flowing. Let's do the same thing for tile number 2. So this is tile no stairs. Let's go tiles with stairs. And then we'll do the same thing. We'll add in a Nav Mesh Link really quickly. I want to move this to 3.3. And I want to say, well, there should be a link, right? As an example, let's move this one. This is the start point. There should be a link to get from this platform over to this platform. There should be a link like that. That makes sense. So I can chase the player this way so they can't escape. There's going to be a link from here to there. I'm also going to make a link. You can't do these ones because these ones are off the tile. We may or may not have a link here on the tile. So that will be a weird thing, right? Where I have a link here to there. What you could do is you could make a link that doesn't go to anywhere. And if there's a tile that's close by, it will by chance hit it. It'll actually work if you did that, if you bake it. We'll talk about baking it later. Okay, let's add another one. So add another one, Nav Mesh Link. We're going to make it so that's 3.3. And then we're going to take the start node, right, as an example. So here's the starter node. And we're going to start it on this side this time. So maybe close to this tile, this little thing right here. And get the end node, which we're going to move to the other side. So again, we're going to move it to over here, this little platform over here. So that's how it's going to be. So there's a path from here to here to here. And then now you got to consider, do you want to go this way or both? I think I want both, just to give the best path, the shortest path. Let's do 2 more. And then we're done with these. So 3, 3. And I want to get the starting point, right, where I want them. So that's one here. And the other one, the ending point, I want, let's say, over there. Okay, again, you can be creative and put them where you like. And maybe one more point over there. Let's add, and then we'll be done for this Nav Mesh Link. You can go into a lot of detail. You can put way more than this, as many as you like. It's totally up to you. And it's really flexible. Okay, one thing we can also do is we can select all these later on and add a width. I forgot to do that. They should have at least a width of 1, and that's perfectly fine. This is just for seeing the link. I think it's important to see the link. So again, this is my x-axis, and I want to put the x-axis, the start will be over here this time, right? So this is where it's going to be. And then the ending will be on the other side, which will be over here. Now you don't have to make these wide. You can make them so that they're narrow, right? So there is no width, and they're just little links like this. It's totally up to you how you want to do it. If you do it wide, it doesn't do the circles. I think the circles are good because, so let me go back to this one. So if I go back to the original one, which is tile no stairs, and go back to the one that I had width, which I think is the first one I did. Yeah. Then it kind of is consistent. All right, so that's what it looks like. So if I zoom in now, you can see that there actually are three-dimensional little jumps that they're doing. Now this one, this tile with stairs, doesn't have a jump off point. I've just made it that way. So they have to go down the stairs. The agent will have to go down the stairs to chase the player. Okay, cool. So let's do a couple things. Let's say tile no stairs. Let's do an override and apply all. Tile with stairs. Let's do an override and apply all. And now when we run the game, let's see how it chases us. So cool, I can jump on the platform and haha, you can't get me. And let's see what happens. Let's see if it finds a way to get to me. It goes up the stairs, and then it will jump and take the nearest path to get to me, right? There we are. Cool. So what about if I jump back over here? Can it get back to me? It's going to go back the same way because that's the only path it has. And what about if I go way over here? What is it going to do? Well, it's going to go right across, right? It can follow me pretty much wherever I am. What about over here? Can it get to me? Yeah, it's going to go down where it can jump, and it's going to jump down because that's the nearest place it can go. All right, so that's kind of what it'll do. So it's much better than what it was before. Much, much better. And a lot more control. Now you're going to say, wait a minute, there's a lot of pre-planning here, Tom, and I thought you said procedural generation and all that. What do you mean by that? Well. Now that I have tile no stairs and tile with stairs, let's duplicate these and not bake everything. So let's clear the baking, no baking, right? And I want to get this tile no stairs, and let's duplicate this. So Control D to duplicate tile no stairs. And I want to move this other tile, and I'm going to put it over here. And what I want to do is I want to rotate this second copy of tile no stairs across the y-axis 90 degrees, right? And let us also, just move over here, let's make sure that we can snap everything too so we don't have any collisions. So again, snap, and let's take care of any abnormalities like this one. Wonderful. And let's do the same thing with tile with stairs. Tile with stairs, I'm going to Control D, and then I'm going to pull this out, and we're going to also put it back over here. I don't want any Z fighting, so I'm just going to do the same thing. I'm going to go V snapping, move that back in there. And once I have that in there, there seems to be no abnormalities in this one. I'm also going to rotate this by 90 degrees on the y-axis. So 90 degrees, so it looks different. And it's different stair position maybe. Right? Different stair position. This one goes that way, and this one goes this way. And that's pretty cool, right? Okay. Great. So if I was to go back here and bake again, right, then look at that. Everything is a beautiful thing. It's wonderful, right? That's how beautiful it is. And it's way better and more flexible than what we had before. But this doesn't take care of the procedural generation bit. I want these tiles to be in random locations. How do I do that? Well, we're not going to do that today. And I kind of outlined how you can do that in the past. You'd create basically a controller that allows you to have flexibility in terms of how wide, how many tiles wide, by how many tiles far, by how many tiles high, as an example, if you want to. And then it'll generate all these tiles. But how does it bake everything afterwards? Well, that is the clincher. Let's add in a level controller, which is different than the game controller, just to make the scripts different. So add a new C# script. We'll call this the level controller. All right, there's my level controller C# script. I want to attach it to my level game object. There we go. And double click on it so I can start it off. It's not baked right now. So I need to do a couple things here in my level controller script. One is I need to include a using statement at the top. uniengine.ai, all right, where I can access all the new features. And what I want to do is I want to do a public Nav Mesh Surface, right? And I'm going to call this Nav Mesh Surface. Nav Mesh Surface. If I can type properly. There we go. And then I want to make a reference to it. So I'm going to say, well, Nav Mesh Surface, right? If I can wait for my resharper to do its thing. Nav Mesh Surface, come on, is equal to get component. Whoa, what a delay. Come on, resharper. There we go. Nav Mesh Surface, get component, Nav Mesh Surface. Right? And once I've got that, then it's going to find the Nav Mesh Surface that's attached to my level. All right? So once I have this, then on start, what I want to do is Nav Mesh Surface, a single line of code. I want to build my Nav Mesh, and we're done. That's it. And how does this work? Anything that's inside of my level, so any of the tiles that I put in my levels that are of type ground are now, notice again, there's no Nav Mesh built. I've literally cleared the Nav Mesh, no Nav Mesh, clear, right? But once I run it, then it's built everything for me. Now there is a bit of an issue, and I want to talk about this. I'm using two tiles. I'm using a tile with stairs and tile no stairs, but the models that I've used are from Blender, and it says I don't have access to read and write. That's easily fixed. So I want to click on actually let's do them all. The pillar, the tile, and the tile number 2, they all come from Blender. I want to go over here in the model tab inside of the models folder. I want to click on read write enabled. That's for all 3 of them, because I know I'm going to have the same problem with the pillar when I add it in a second. And I click apply. And if I do that, what it does is it enables read writing of the mesh. So I can modify the mesh and add the Nav Mesh. Okay. Let's run it again and see if I get that error. So now we're good to go. So if I run it now, you can see I can jump up there, and now we're going to see where the little agent's going to go to find me. Hey, what happened? I made that only, didn't I make it only single directional? Well, no, I made it bidirectional by accident. We can fix that. So if I go to the one that has the link, where the link is on the floor, so when the link goes from the mesh to the floor, which is this tile, the tile no stairs, then I want to modify this link here, right? So the Nav Mesh that goes from 0 to 3, which is the bottom one, and I want to make it so that it's not bidirectional, right? And then I can go to overrides and apply to all. And now that Nav Mesh link is only single directional from the start, which is this part right here, right? To the floor. So it can jump down but not come up. All right. So save that and run it again. And now we can see that just like before, if I jump up, it's going to find its way around, but this time it can't jump at me. It's going to have to go around and find the shortest path by going to the stairs. This is the way we planned it. Goes up the stairs, and then it'll leap across the closest area. Yay! Awesome. What about obstacles? And I know this is something that you can do, and you can figure out if I added more of these. So let's say, for example, I added a lot more of these, and I put it in, how it would generate them. I can just switch them around randomly and modify the rotations and so on. What about obstacles? So let's add an obstacle. Again, I'm going to go to resources, prefabs, and I'm going to go to my pillar. I'm going to drag my pillar into the scene. We're going to use the obstacle for a couple of different things. So here's my obstacle. And my pillar, right? A couple of things to make sure that we have this done right. Remember that the only thing that's going to be baked is inside a child of the level object. All right? Which means if I want my pillar to be an obstacle, it has 2 things. One, the layer should be ground. All right, if I'm going to make it possibly walkable on the top. And it's got to be inside of my level, the place that has the surface, which is the level game object, the containing surface. Okay, so that's one. The other thing is, let's add another one. Let's duplicate that, Control D, and now we have another pillar, and let's put it somewhere else in the scene, far away. It doesn't have to be in the same tile even. It can be somewhere else that's going to maybe create a dead end or some kind of weird blockage, right? Like over here. Let's make this one block the way, so it has to find another way of traveling. You know, as an example, maybe it's not thin enough to pass by this. So these are the obstacles that I want to do. So how does this work now? Well, let's try it. So if I run it, and let's see what it generated. And if I click on the level, well then, guess what? It did everything for me. It made the obstacle that I have to go around. Same thing with over here. This is completely impassable over here. You can see that it clearly made an area that's not passable. Here it's passable because I made the length, the width of the agent kind of schmarmy and small. Let's take a look at that enemy. The enemy actually, from an agent perspective, is remarkably thin. The radius is 0.5, and so it's going to be able to pass through these areas barely, right? So that's pretty cool. And so, but it baked everything nicely, right? It baked everything so that it recalculated, and now it has a new path for everything. So if I go back to the game, and let's suppose I go up to where I want to go, my silly controller, there we go. I go up to the level, and I'm going to go into an area that it has to get to, and it's going to reroute to where it's going to go. Notice that it's just going to jump and find the closest path to where I'm going. Okay, there it is. And it's going to actually get to me and do what it has to do. Yay. Okay, it's going to go down the stairs now and come down to me because it can't jump down that way. Awesome, right? But one thing it can't do, and where I can hide, is on top of the pillar. So I'm on top of the pillar, it can't get to me. There's not even a walkable surface. It's going to come near as possible to me. One question I had in the earlier lab is, how come the pillar doesn't have a walkable area on top? Well, it has to do with the agent width. So remember what's happening, right? That the pillar, these pillars here, when they get generated, are quite thin on top for an agent that's 0.5. It has to be a walkable area of some decent width. Let's test this by making this pillar here wider. Let's make it here wider in the game. But we're not going to modify the prefab. So the way to do that is, again, I'm going to use my rect transform tool, my rect tool. And what I can do is, depending on where I'm looking from the rect, I can use the control key to modify the width. Let's make it much wider. And let's make it walkable, so it's going to be much lower. Still a surface, but not enough, not touching this one and not touching this one. But if I get up there, it will, let's say, map to this surface if I really want to. And if I connect them somehow, like so, what will it do? All right, what do you think this is going to do now? And let's make this so that it's also not just that wide, but, well, let's see, that's probably wide enough. Let's see what happens. Does it create a walkable area from one surface to the other, even though there's a height difference? Let's do that. So run, and let's see what it did. So again, going back to scene, and if I look at the level, then yeah, no problem. It made the area not walkable, but it made this part walkable and connected to both sides. So that's another great thing. You can add objects randomly, and as long as it creates an area that you can jump, it's totally fine. Or you can connect to it, it's totally fine. Michael says, does it block the jump links? It doesn't block them, but it doesn't do anything to them. So you can still jump because there's still a bit of an arc, right? If you notice in the jump links, that's one thing it doesn't have. You can't tell me the speed of the links. There's some things that you can definitely do here, right? Like, for example, when you want to detect when you're in the middle of the jump, and you want to do that for different reasons. For example, for animation, I want to change my animation from a run to a jump. Then you need to be able to detect this happens. You can do this in a number of ways. One of them is to detect if I'm grounded or not. So if my object is grounded, then change the animation. I know that I'm on off mesh link equivalent, right? Or whatever, right? So those are the things that I can do. And that is the way to use a obstacle type. Let's leave that obstacle in the way. Literally is not part of the tile set, but I've added it in just to make it just a little bit different. So you can have these random obstacles, and they can actually, even things that are falling from the sky, as long as they hit the ground, and then if you time it properly, then you can make it so that it procedurally generates the mesh on top of them, as long as they're considered ground. Okay. So again, if you were to do it with a series of passes, you can make it so that, hey, first I form the ground, then I layer the obstacles, I let everything fall, I do it in a series of timings where I build up my passes for my surface, and then once I've got everything there that's an obstacle that I've baked, and especially if it's immovable, once it connects to the ground, it stops moving and it's set. Let's say it can't move anymore, like a rock or something like that. Then you can do it so that it's really interesting the way it creates some navigation. Some areas will be inaccessible, obviously, because you need to kind of do a clean pass that kind of creates a pathway from one place to the other. All right, this is good. This is your first part of your lab for, you want to probably do something like run it. And when you do your screenshot, what I'm looking for this one is if you just show me this. So you can see that there's some off-mesh links, the links that we made, the nav links, as well as, the nav mesh that's connected with, as an example, different tiles, and it's been generated at runtime. Let's save this and save the project and close down Unity and then put it up on GitHub. So I'll say something like git add dot git commit -m, and I'll say added the Nav Mesh component system, right? Which is what I did, git push, and that's going to push everything up to GitHub. You have everything now that I have. Questions around this? Really simple. There's a lot more to it. If you look up the documentation online for this, so example, if you go to the project, I encourage you guys to go to the project to look at this. There's a lot of documentation here. If you go to documentation and how to build components and all that stuff, high level Nav Mesh building components. There's different pieces here that they talk about, as well as techniques and patterns for connecting surfaces. It's an open project, which means you can modify even the code to make use of it in your project. So really, really good project. I'm really happy with it that they introduced this, and it creates procedurally generating pathfinding very easy. Okay, cool. So that is this. All right, let's get back to the project again. So let's add our second piece. So again, what we've done right now is we've talked about this. All right, so Nav Mesh Components done. We want a few more things here. Health system, I want to make a health bar that's really quick. We've done it before, but I want to make it in 3D. Some kind of the health bar to objects. We're going to add them to the enemies in 3D. Some kind of billboarding we're going to add in there as well. So we should put that in there as well, billboarding. We need to put billboarding in for the health bar. And then we're going to make object selection happen. Let's do this next. Back in Unity. Hopefully you're with me. All right, the next part is the health bar system. And what I want to do is, we've done this before last semester, but I'm redoing it for a couple of reasons. One is I have this canvas, and we use the canvas right now for my mini-map. And I'm not going to ask you guys to change that. So the mini-map is there. Let's just rush out there and change the canvas. Here it is. We've been using the canvas. Remember, the canvas, the way it works from last day is you can enable and disable the mini-map based on a button key press, an M button, to put the map on and off. Funny enough, that is a common key, even in Valheim, to turn on and off the map. That's kind of cool. I didn't do it on purpose. M seems like the right thing for map, right? But we want to hide this for now as you're going to work with our new canvas. I can have as many canvas objects in the scene as I like. It's just another game object, but I have to specify which camera can see the canvas. So let's add the new one in. So I'm going to add in a new UI canvas. Here it is. I'm going to go into 2D mode because it's easier to look at stuff and plan things in 2D. Here we are. And what I want to do here is I've got a bit of a texture that I want you guys to add in. I've shared it with you guys up on Blackboard. So if you go to Blackboard, there is a bar texture that I created as a PNG image. So let's just get that texture. And I'm going to drag and drop this bar image into my textures folder. There we go. The bar image needs some fixing. It needs to, the texture type from a default needs to be sprite 2D and UI. Please change that. It's a single sprite mode. That's good. Mesh type is tight. I'm going to, when it comes to wrap mode, I want to leave it as clamp, but my filter mode, I want to do point no filter, as it's I want to have good resolution for this thing. I want to change the max size to 4096, 4K, as an example, and I want you to click Apply. Now it looks like this is the object. It's 325 by 50. I made it big so we can see it. All right, cool, very simple that I put this together, right? Again, I used Fireworks to do it. So if you look at the actual object itself, if you're interested, when I put Fireworks together, and again, you can use any thing to do that. It's actually made up of several different rectangles. So there's one here and here and here, and all I've done is put them together to make this kind of thing. And this thing here is another rectangle that I have in the background that has a bit of transparency. So that's kind of what I did. No, I don't want to save. All right, so that is the this object. And what I want to do for this is I want to go back to my canvas and I want to right click, or on my canvas, I want to add a new UI item, which is an image. And I want to drag and drop from my bar to my canvas. There it is. And I want to use this set native size option. So it's going to change the size of my bar to the same size, or my image, the same size as my bar. Okay, so this is where we're going with this one. There's the bar, and this bar is actually the foreground. So we're going to say the health bar foreground is what this is. So health bar foreground. I want to make a health bar background, and I'm going to do that by, again, right-clicking on the canvas, going to UI, going to image, and changing this to health bar fill. There's my health bar fill. And the way canvases work is you can layer the fill in canvas order, in the order. That's how it does the order. There's other ways too, but that is the easiest way to do it. I want to change the size to match the health bar foreground, which is 325 by 50. Let's do that. So 325 by 50. And the thing to do is, what I want to do is I want to make it so that these two things are child objects of the health bar itself. So again, select both those two items, right click and go create empty parent. And this is going to select, we're going to make this thing called health bar. And the width and the height, I want to make it so it's 325 by 50. So it matches the size of my objects. Okay. So for the health bar right now, there are a couple of options. If I go to center, if I click on this thing, right, you can see that it's centered. But what I want to do is I want to maximum size this thing. So I want to go down to this on the right, and I want to click on left click on this. So it's going to maximum size the object to the health bar itself. And the same thing goes with this health bar foreground. So health bar foreground, I want to go to this, and I also want to do the same thing. So maximum size. So what this is going to do is if I change the size of my health bar game object, then these two things will stretch to fit. Okay, that's what I want. So both those two objects. Yay, let's change the background fill so that I like green for my health to be positive. So green, that's awesome. And what I want to do is in the health bar, I want to use the an object to make this happen. So let's say add component, and I'm going to add in a slider, which is part of the a canvas system. Slider is a slider component, but this slider component will not be interactable. I'm not going to have a color tint to it whatsoever, right? And what I want to do is I want to select the fill rect, right? I want to just drag and drop this health bar into the fill rect itself. So kind of do one of these. So just take this whole health bar. Let's do that again. The whole health bar itself and drag it in there. If I do that, if I do this, sorry, then it does it and it's nice. Look at that. So I dragged and dropped the health bar fill inside the fill rect area. Okay. And what I can do is I can make it go big and small, nice and easy. Really beautiful, right? I can set the maximum value to 100, and I can make it so that it does only whole numbers. So 1, 2, 3, not fractions. Okay, let's go back and look at that again. So again, after I've got the background, this is the foreground, right? Which is just this shape. I've got the bar fill, which is this shape, right, as an example. And what I also have is I have a foreground. Now, one thing I like to do is also add a background. So otherwise, it's going to be transparent. So you're going to see right through it. I don't want that. I want the background to be another color. You can use another color like red as an example. So let's do yet another image. So again, I'm going to go with other image. So UI image. And again, this image is going to be 325 by 50. And it's going to be red color. And I want this one to be layered. This is the background, right? So this is the health bar background fill, right? And what's going to happen is this one is going to be behind the fill, like this, right? So it's going to be behind the fill. And what's going to happen is, by default, when the health bar itself is starting off, it's going to start like this, right? And as you take damage, you're going to see it's going to turn more and more red until it's very much like this. Okay, kind of cool. I'm going to leave it like this, though. So minimum value is 0, maximum value is 100. I'm going to start with 100, and I'm going to save the bar. All right. Are you with me? Check mark if you're with me, X if you're not. Again, there's many ways to do this. There's lots of tutorials online do very similar things. I'm using it this way. Pretty simple stuff. Okay, Michael and Russ, again, thank you very much. All right, so now that I have this and that I have my health bar, I need a bit of code to make it work, okay? So let's add that in. So I'm going to go to my scripts, and I'm going to make this health bar script. So create a new C# script called health bar. And I'm going to double click on it to make it work. And I want some testing. I want to test my health bar to make sure it works. So I want to add some areas in here to make all this work properly. One thing I need is some kind of, I want to keep track, the health bar itself will keep track of the value of the health that's in it right now, the current health, and the maximum health. I want all those things there. And if I can change that later. So again, what I want is a public float, public int. This is going to be all integers, which is the current health. And I want a public integer that is the maximum health. Okay, I want those two things. I also want a public reference to the slider. In order for me to get that, I need to go to using Unity Engine.ui, right? And I want to do that here. So I'm going to say public slider, which is going to be the health bar slider. That's what it is. And I want to convert these to ranges. So I want to say range, which is kind of cool. And my range in units is going to be my current health. It could be from 0 to 100. Okay. And what I want to do for my maximum health is do the same thing, range, which is from 1 to 100. Again, you can make it so these numbers are different. I'm just making it so they're ranges, so they become sliders. Okay. You can also make these private and make them serialized. It's up to you. All right, so what does this look like? And well, I need to get the slider reference here. So the way I'm going to do this is health bar slider. I know that the health bar slider is part of my health bar, so I can say something like get component and then slider. And that's going to get a reference to my health bar slider instead of me dragging and dropping, which I try to avoid as much as possible. Cool. Excellente. And so what I want to do then is have a couple of methods. One of them is a take damage method, public take damage. And it's going to be some kind of integer damage that's going to return void. I'm not going to really return if I've taken damage or not. You could also make this a Boolean. I took damage or I didn't take damage. But I'm going to make it so that it is void. And the way take damage would work is I'm going to take my health bar slider dot value and I want to subtract the damage. So pretty equal. Nice. And what I want to also do is take my current health and I want to equal it. I can also subtract the damage, or I can make it equal to the health bar value. I'm just going to make it so it's minus equal to the damage as well. So it keeps track of it. It shows it in the slider, and it also shows it in the current health object. All right, cool. What about if I have, what about if my, as an example, if I want to reset, I want to reset back to normal. So public void reset. If I call the reset function, then what it should really do is I should say that my health bar slider dot value is equal to maximum health, whatever that's going to be. And I also want my current health to equal to maximum health. I want to change those two things back to normal. So reset and take damage. Let's serialize this class. So we'll say system.serializable. So I can make it available anywhere else, whether it's added to a game object or not. Cool. And let's make a couple of testing values. So I'll say if input.getKeyDown, and I want to use keycode for testing for damage. We're going to say that I want to say K for kill, and I'm going to say take damage. We'll just use 10 points, right? And how about if I want to reset, input.getKeyDown, keycode.r, I think is a good number for one for reset, and we'll just do a reset function. Pretty simple script, just to test the health bar, and we've done this stuff before. Nothing is new here. It's different. Yeah, it's different, Russ. I just wanted to show you this way because we did it differently, and it was 2D. This is 3D, so it's going to look a little better. I think this is better too. All right, so this is cool. What do we do now? Let's save it and try it. So again, we've added on our health bar. We want to drag and drop our health bar script. And it says that null reference exception object not set to reference of an object. As an example, well, where is it? What is the null reference error? That is weird that I got that right away. I'm not running anything. Let's clear that up. That's weird. And yeah, oh, here, this is what we want. The health bar slider is something that we want to connect to. So this is going to find the slider, right? And what we want is, oh, maximum health doesn't have a little slider. That's really weird. Why is that? Maximum health, public int, 1 to 100.
It's because you set its range from 1 to 100, but because you just dragged it in, it defaults to 0, which isn't an option. Just click on the bar to pop it.
Let's just make it equal to 1. And we'll start off as equal to 0. Let's do this simple thing, and there we go. I didn't do it anyway. Okay, so it doesn't matter. We're just going to make it so it's way up here, and our current health starts off way up here. And then let's see what happens when we run it. And we should see in the middle of our screen, this thing is popping around. So if I was going to make this, I can put this anywhere I want. It's just a health bar image or a component. And if I press the K button, you can see that I take health nicely. It's recorded. right over here, both in the number of health points I have plus my maximum health. So very, very cool, nice and easy. And if I press R, I reset it back to normal. Beautiful little health bar and a beautiful thing. And that is great. I want to take this health bar the way it is and make it a prefab. So prefabs, let's take this health bar and drag and drop. Boop. So when I want a health bar that is part of a canvas, right, then, and it's going to be screen space, not world space, then this is the health bar I'm going to use. All right, health bar, and this is screen space, so that's on a canvas. But I want, and by the way, you can also rename this thing if it makes more sense to you. Name it so that it's health bar screen space. So I know which one it is. I'm going to make another one that's health bar world space. For that, I need to use my canvas item. So here's my canvas. And what I want with the canvas is I want to change it from screen space overlay to world space. Okay, cool. There's my world space. Awesome. And what I want to do with the world space is I want to find the player's camera, right? So I'm going to make a health bar controller. So right now there's a controller on the health bar, but this canvas is going to be the health bar canvas. Health bar canvas. And actually we can say it's health bar world space. That's just easier, so we know what it is. It's a canvas, but we can see what it is. It's a health bar world space, and it contains the health bar screen space. All right, but we're going to use this thing here up here, right? Let's make some adjustments. So on the health bar world space, let's make a health bar controller, right? So it's different than the health bar script itself. Health bar. Again, you could have renamed this health bar screen space, and I can make this health bar world space. I'm just going to call this health bar controller. So new C# script and health bar controller. All right. So health bar controller is, I'm going to attach it to the health bar world space object. So health bar controller. There we are. And what I want to do with this is I want to say that I want to make so that the event camera, right? My render mode is world space. That's the canvas. So here's something. This is the canvas object that's inside of my thing. Is there a way of getting access to the canvas object and assigning it to my the player object camera that's in the scene? I need to get access to the player camera right here, right? The player camera is a camera. We know that. And the player has a behavior called player behavior, right? So I want to find the player, but I can also find something that says player camera. So that's something that I can do. Let's go into health bar controller and think about how I'm going to do that. So first thing is I want to get access to the canvas. So I'm going to say that again, using Unity engine. .ui. I want to get access to that canvas. So public canvas, right? And I want to call this the health bar canvas. Okay. So the health bar canvas, I want to get it. So I'll say health bar canvas is equal to get component canvas. All right. So I've got access to the canvas. Now, how do I set the event type? Because that is, remember, everything is if I can set it in the inspector. So if I can set it in here, event camera, I can set the event camera to something else. Can I get that? Am I able to do that? Let's see that if I can do this. So health bar canvas dot, and then I type in, oh man, and I go cam and oh man, and it says world camera. It says camera used for sizing the canvas when in screen space camera. Also used as a camera that events will be sent through for a world space canvas. Hey, world camera. So that's what I want to use. So world camera is what I need, but I need to get a reference to the camera first. So let's just comment this out for now. And what I want to do is I want to go in here and go public. And this is going to be a camera, which I'm going to call the player camera, right? And the player camera, the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to do it in a different way. I'm going to say that player camera is equal to GameObject.find, and I'm going to find something that's called player camera. Okay, but when I do this, it doesn't see it as a camera. It sees it as a game object. So that's what it does. It says, hey, I've got a game object where the player camera is, and I need to find the camera component. We're going to call this camera, right? The camera component, again, I'm doing this all so that I can use this anywhere. I can just drag and drop it, and it's going to find the player. That's why I'm doing it this way. Or I can just, if you really want to be lazy, you can just drag and drop the components in there, and then, hope for the best. Camera is equal to, I want to get that the camera is equal to the camera that's inside of the player camera component. So I'm going to say player camera, which is the object.get component camera. Yay. I could have done this in one by chaining, by doing an object chain, okay? But I'm not going to do it that way. I'm just going to do it this way. So I've got an extra object that you can see, but this helps me keep track and keep it separate. Cool. Now that I've got the camera, and again, if you really want to, you can change this to world camera just to make sure that it is fine. So I'm going to refactor, rename to world camera. Then I want to just basically say that the health bar canvas world camera is equal to the world camera. Okay, I just want to do that for now. Let's see what happens when I did this. There's also the minimap camera. You wouldn't know which one you get. I agree with that. That's why I'm doing it this way, right? So let's see what happens when I do world space. And I want to see if I run it, what happens when do I get the camera? And I do. Look at that. I get the player camera. And if I look up, there it is. There's my, it's hard to see it, but it's actually in world space. It's like way over there, like way up there. So it's a little line right now, but it's in world space. And to see it, it's like, if I take it off of 2D mode, then it's like, well, it's way, here's where my world is. And it's like way big and way over there. All right. So that's kind of cool. But I want to be able to find it, and I found it. I found everything. The health bar world space canvas, I found this. I've changed it to the event camera. And now that I've done this kind of stuff, I'd like to make some of these things private. You don't need to expose some of this stuff in the inspector. So I want to make this one private. I don't care about showing this one. I don't care about showing the player camera or this one. You don't need to see any of that stuff. This is just my own private way of doing stuff, right? Because I'm not really doing anything. I'm never going to drag and drop anything in there. If I'm not going to drag and drop, then you can make it private. And then if you really want to see those things, then if you think about it, here they are, then I can always go to the inspector and go debug, right? And then you can see that those things come up. So you can always see private stuff with the debug, okay, debug mode. I'm just going to go back to normal mode. I don't need to see that right now. But we know we're getting them. We know we're getting these objects, and we're getting them assigned. Awesome. So now that I've set the camera to world space and I know which camera is looking at it, that's great, right? That's the first thing I want to do here. I'm not going to use the update most likely. I'm probably going to use something called late update, right? Which is something that is going to be used for billboarding. Using billboarding. Late update for billboarding. Late update for billboarding. Just keeping an eye on the time here, so we're doing still pretty well. I'm not doing it yet. But for now, what I want to do is let's make this camera viewable. And I got to think about what I need to do. I want to use my rect transform tool, and I want to make the size of the canvas the same size as my my object here, my health bar that I see here in the canvas. So I'm just going to kind of shrink this down. And I'm going to make this so that it is the same size. I'm just using my eye for this, right? So again, you can see that I'm just going to make it the same size. And you can just do this. In fact, if you really want to, you can make it slightly smaller. It's up to you. There we go. That is the size of my canvas. It looks pretty good. If you really want to be a stickler, you can do it so that it is exact, or as exact as you're going to get based on how much you zoom in. So notice that's 326 by 49. You can just do 325 by 50, which is exactly the same size. The difference is where the canvas starts in the X and Y position. So that's what I want, right? But it's starting on the left and it's ending a little bit inside, so we can make it slightly larger than that. 326, we'll do it. Okay, because it's got to incorporate additional padding and so on. But it's pretty close to what it's going to be, right? 326 by 50, it looks pretty good. But it's massive. It's like a crazy large object, like super large. And in world space, if I look at the game, it's right here. Look, if I play the game now, it's like it's massive, right? I need to make this way smaller than this. And I can do that by going to my scale and doing something like 0.05 and 0.05 and 0.05. And I think that might be a better scale. Let's jump to that size and see what that looks like in the scene. So clickety-click, there we are. And I want to move this into the scene. So I'm going to go to 0, 0, because now we're in world space. And if I double click, it's right here. And if this looks way too big, which it does for me, then it's got to be even smaller than this because it's like the size of my whole level. So let's make it 0.005, 0.005, 0.005. Okay, let's double click on that and make sure we can see it. So there it is. It's pretty small, and we're going to get out of 2D mode for a second so we can see it. That looks more reasonable in size. Let's move it up so we can see what it looks like, and let's put it onto the enemy, and just so we can see what that looks like. So again, if you look at the enemy, look down there. Does that look right? Right? Does it look right? Yeah, it does. It looks about right. Right, for the enemy. This is the size I want to make it. So 0.005 seems to work for me. Yeah, it's slightly larger than, like I said, 326 just works out a little better. I guess the padding and everything else. All right, so that's pretty cool. So that is the size that I want, and I confirmed it by putting it near the enemy, and it looks right. Okay, so what I want to do is let's zero this out again, please. We need to zero it out again because, and we're going to put it back in the enemy in a second. But I need to zero it out because I want to make this into a prefab, right? Before we move any further. I want to make this into a prefab. So let's drag and drop it into prefabs. Thank you. There's my health bar world space. And inside of my script, I want to use the billboarding tactic that I said before. Let's bring it up. We have a health bar that's in the scene now that is a prefab. This is good, right? There's my health bar prefab. Let us bring it up. And the problem with the health bar the way it is let's make it so we can see it. The player can see it right now. So there it is. Let's say it's right there next to the player. The problem with this is if I run this the way it is, then sure, it's in world space and it's right there, sitting there. But guess what? If I go over here, it's like not good. And if I kill it, it does damage. But if I go on the other side and I jump over here, then it's reversed. Right? So that's not cool. I don't want it to look reversed. I want it to be the same every single time. And so this way we use something called billboarding. Let's do that with the in our script. So how does billboarding work? What we want to do is we want to get the transform of the camera. That's what we want to do. And we want to get transform.lookAt. And we can do something that looks like this. So world camera dot transform dot lookAt. Right? And normally you'd say, well, I want to look at what is the camera looking at. It's going to look at the player, right? But what I want to look at is that it's going to look at the health bar. So the health bar, right, So if I say transform, world camera transform look at, I really want the health bar transform look at. Transform of the health bar to look at what? If I say something just like the camera, so world camera dot transform, if I do that, it's not going to be exactly accurate. And let me explain how this works. So if I was to run it, if I just did this, you might think that that's enough. And let's see what it does. So if I do it now, then, well, it's kind of weird, right? It doesn't kind of look at me. It looks in my direction. But what if I'm up here? Does it actually look at me? And it does. But you know what? And it's almost working where it should, right? Almost works right. But what might work better is if I took into account something different. If I did it slightly differently than this. Let's go back to this. So this is one way of doing it, but the other way to do it is let's look at what the camera is looking at. So transform forward is a better way to look at it. So transform dot forward, and I want to add in my own transform position. So transform position plus my world camera transform forward. And what that's going to look like is a lot different than that. Let's take a look now when I run. So that is a little different. And you're going to see that it responds nicer to my camera, right? And it is only going to rotate towards me as opposed to actually rotating it on the X and Y. It's kind of pretty good. It's pretty good there. That's what it's going to do. So it's kind of rotating around, and that works a lot better than just the look at. So this is cool, and I've updated my that's billboarding that's added in, and it's in late update, not in regular update, to give a chance for the camera to move or the object to move around, and then this thing to update according to what the object does. If I did it in update, then it would try and do it at the same time, and there'd be a bit of jitter. So we want to avoid jitter, and we use late update for that. Okay, so I want to take this component, this health bar world space, and I want to add it now to my enemy. So I want to grab the enemy and go in there. There it is, health bar world space. Put this on top of the enemy marker. Actually cancel, let's do that. And then I want to update the, every enemy has a world space health bar. But first, let's go into the health bar and zero it out. So 0, 0, 0. And let's see what this is going to look like in the enemy. So I probably want it, oops, undo. So I want this to be, there we go. I want this, the enemy health bar world space, to be lifted up so I can see it. There we go, above the enemy. And that's it. That's all I want to do. Just put this above the enemy, save it, and then I'm going to go to the enemy and apply all. So now all enemies have a health bar. And if I run it, then I can see that the enemy's health bar is there. I can jump up, and it's going to try and find me. If it takes damage, no matter where I look, it's going to take damage in the right way when I'm hitting it. Okay. Again, if you don't like the red background and you want to make it another color like black, you can totally do that. If you don't want to have a background, you can remove that portion of your game. It's up to you how you want to do it. Can you just pass that? Don't you want the transform of the object, not the world camera? No. I want the camera, what the camera is looking at. So if the camera's forward is what I want this to look at, plus the position of the object, whatever that is. And that's going to give me the right rotation. So wherever I'm looking, that's where it's going to look. It's going to be angled in the right orientation. Okay, so that is pretty cool. I like it. And let's add in another one to see how that works. So if I duplicate, so the enemy, all enemies have a health bar now. So if I duplicate the enemy, right, and I add that in, let's add the enemy and put them over there this time, or maybe on the other side of the wall, somewhere over here. Let's see how that looks and how that works. So again, running, here, jump on the fence, and let's see what I see. I see the enemy there. I press the K button, and I get damage to both of them. You can see that every time I look at the enemy, I can see the health bar nicely, and it's not inverted, and both of them work fantastic. Nice, nice. Okay, look at that. Bang, 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 bang. And if I reset, then I reset both to what it looks like. So that's pretty cool. So that is 2 health bars I've given you. The health bar, which is that you can add in for the world, for the character, for the I want to make it. And by the way, I can scale it up. So if I want to give myself a health bar, right, I can do that. Because on my regular canvas, here's my regular canvas now. What I can do in my regular canvas, this is canvas, the regular canvas, I can add in a health bar component. So I can say I want screen space health bar that I want to put onto the canvas element right there. And if I look at the canvas element, and now let's go into 2D mode, I want to take that health bar, so the health bar screen space, and I want to position it in the right position, let's say somewhere on the top, right? Or on the left, wherever I want it. I can position it in my user interface the way I like it, right? And I can also position it relative to wherever I want. So because it's just an image. So I can go here and I say, well, I want it relative to the top left corner. That's where I want my anchor to be, right? Kind of thing. So the anchor is the top left corner. So it's always going to hang out here in the top left corner. And then if I run it now, you're going to see that I have a health bar that's always kind of up on the top left corner that tells me my health status. Or if I don't like that, and let's say I like the health bar, like a lot of games have, on the bottom, right, as an example, and I want to put some kind of value here like health, I can totally do that. I can put my health bar on the bottom, and then you can see my mini map on the top right if I want it, and it's kind of in the game, right? And again, to test it, I can test it out, and I can link it to my system. Again, all the health bars are linked together, but now we have both the screen space health bar as well as the world space health bar, and it's working great. All right, this is a great place to put this up on GitHub. Let's save the game. So file, save project, and let's close it off and put it up on GitHub. Okay, so again, going back to this, command prompt, git add dot, git commit -m, and I'll say added screen space, screen and world space health bars. Done. Okay, thank you. So are you good? Are you comfortable with what we've done so far? How is that? It's going to help you, I think, even if you want some kind of destructible elements. If you are if you have a tower that's destructible, you can put a health bar like that on the tower. That's, again, it's going to be billboarded to wherever the player camera is. You may not have a player, but you may have a player camera. And I think billboarding is a really good thing. Again, it really depends on how you're doing it. If you're using a top-down game, maybe it doesn't make sense. But if you're making a game that is similar to what we're doing, I think it can make a lot of sense in terms of the way things are being done. Okay, cool. So that is, let's get back out of 2D. Okay, we're back into 3D, and we're going to just teleport to the player. There's my player object. And we've kind of taken care of this thing, but we're just going to say this part of the health system, right, which is this, the health bar. And we've also added a health bar to a destructible object. We can totally do that. And we've done billboarding. We haven't finished destructible objects yet, but we've done these 2 pieces. Again, there's going to be some part that's left for you. Okay. The next part is the in-game object selection. So I'm kind of going along my little list here. So in order for me to do object selection, I need to have a shader or something like that that provides an outline. Again, you can get this from the asset store, and there's some really great assets I want to point out. I have some that I've used in the past. Let's go into Window, and if I go into Package Manager, and if I go into Your Assets, this is going to go into Unity Registry, but I want to go into My Assets, then I have some great selection stuff that I've used in the past that you can download, right? So And like I said, some of it is perfectly free. Other parts of it might have a bit of an expense, but at the end of the day, you want some way of selecting assets. I'm just going to look through my list here, and you can look at a ton of little assets that you develop over time that you can kind of pull down. So there's my selected effect outline. This is a great little one. Let's look at this on the asset store and see what this is look at. So I definitely recommend this one. It's not free, but the great thing about this is has a bunch of different effects that you can do. And it's based on some really cool shaders that you can kind of attach things that are transparent and a lot of stuff. If you want something that's professional looking and great, I think this one's a great one. All right. And I've used it in some projects, that I've made for clients actually. When we did VRTO. Okay, so we used that for VRTO when we selected objects. So that's kind of cool. And there's other simple selection as well that you can get to. So let's go back to this. I'm just talking about some assets too, so you don't have to make your own. There is I've got a simple, there's also selection packs that are free that you can use. But I recommend that one, I think, as a pretty good one for something that's overall, it does everything that you need to do. Okay, what about if you want to make your own? And that's what we're doing today. We're not going to download something because I can download all the assets I want, but I want to make it so that you know what you're doing too. Well, we need a couple of shaders that I want to try out. And again, you can look up shaders. You guys should know about shaders because you use them in OpenGL. But I want to make a new folder called shaders. And if you remember, I have up on Blackboard a couple of shaders that I included. One of them is an outline shader. The other one is a silhouetted outline. They do slightly different things. And I got these shaders from a source online. Again, you can look at, there's like a bunch of shaders you can find online for different things, or you don't have to make it yourself. Later on in this semester, we're going to be talking about shaders and using shader graph to do the same thing. But for today, we're not going to do it. I'm just giving you a couple shaders that you can use. So remember, shaders are programs, and they go through the graphics pipeline, and the graphics pipeline going through the vertex shader into the rasterizer, out the other end into the fragment shader to create an effect for the lighting, how the lighting is going to work in your game, and how textures are affected. So that's kind of what I want to do. And what I have is two shaders that I've recommended. So let's drag and drop those two shaders. I'm just going to do the same thing here. The shaders end off with the shader extension. So again, inside shaders, I'm going to take the two shaders I mentioned and drag and drop them into the Unity project. And it looks like this, an outline shader and a silhouetted outline shader. I think the silhouetted outline shader needs to be modified just a touch. I don't need all these comments right now. But what it does is, if you notice the shader program, the way it's set up, it's CG or HLSL compared to what you're used to with OpenGL and GLSL. It's not using GLSL, it's using HLSL or CG. And notice it has properties here at the beginning. These are all properties that are exposed in the inspector, right, as an example. And then you have different pieces or components that are part of the shader, right? So here's your vertex component, right? Then you have your fragment component down in here, and the fragment doesn't do much. It just takes the vertex color and spits it back out. So there's nothing that's really being done here inside of this part. Okay, and then there is a surface shader. It's taking Lambert, a Lambert shader, and that's what's kind of creating the shader program from a lighting perspective. It does a outline pass. That's what it is. And what it does is it creates an outline around the regular texture. Okay, so that's kind of a very high level way of this silhouetted outline, how it works. And this is something that can be seen through. So if you actually attach the silhouette on top of an object, you can actually see right through it, even through other objects. All right, so let us make a couple of materials to receive these shaders. Okay, remember shader programs, they affect light and texture and materials. Let's add two materials in there. I want to make a new material that we're going to call the selected. I want almost like a selected effect. So selected effect material. And I want another one, create new material, which is the silhouetted effect material. So those are the two, right? And again, I'm just calling them material, but you can call them silhouetted effect and selected effect. Let's do the selected effect first. So in the selected effect, instead of using a standard shader, because I have my two shaders in here and they're both custom, notice that they start off, if I kind of go to the outline shader, it says custom outline shader. You can change this to make it whatever you want, right? As an example. So here, if I go to materials and if I go to the selected effect, I want to switch this from the standard shader to the custom outline shader. Okay. I'm also going to attach, if I want to, I can attach material of the object I want to connect to. All right. So there's some issues with this one. It's not perfect, but we're going to talk about it in a second. The silhouetted effect, all right, again, is not going to use a standard shader, but rather it's going to use a custom silhouette outline shader. All right, so those are the two different ones. Notice that both of them have different features. For example, I have my outline color. Let's make my outline color for both an orange color, like this. Okay, so again, I'm just choosing an orange color. That is 255.138.255 or hexadecimal FF88A00. And I'm going to do the same color for my outline color, right, for my selected effect. So selected effect, my main color, and then there's the outline color. This is the one I want. I'm going to go in here and just paste that value in so it's the same color. And we can attach the shaders, these are materials, to an object that I want to select. So the way it would work is, let's suppose I want to select this block, all right? Well, my pillar has a mesh render with materials on it. Right now, the material that I have on is pillar. But what I can do is I can add in another spot, right, as an example. And if I take my selected effect material, right, and add it on, right, then it is really weird, right? It gives me this really weird selected effect. Take a look at that, right? So that might be too fat, right? And what you can do is you can go back to the selected effect material and you can turn this, the size right down to where it makes sense. So it kind of creates almost like the selected effect that I can look at it. And when I click onto it, once I have it in there, it's good. But it did something weird. What it did was it changed my texture, right? It took my texture away. And there is a slot for a texture, and we can program this so it works on different objects. Or you can have different materials for different objects, whatever you want, right? That has the material on there, or the texture. One thing to note is that it overrides when I have both materials, because the texture doesn't go from one material to the other and using it this way, right? Then, and by the way, it doesn't matter whether you layer it one after the other. Here is the preview that you're going to get, right? Because we're not making use of, later on we're going to use shader graph, and shader graph is going to make it much easier to do this. But for now, I'm going to talk about using a material like this and using shaders, right? Okay, cool. Well, I can add a material in here, so I can go to my textures, or my texture, and I can drag and drop in the stone wall D texture. So then it kind of creates this funny effect. When I turn on this material or add it, then it selects it and makes it kind of flatter looking. All right, this is maybe the effect that you want. And you can find other shaders out there that don't do this and allow pass-through textures. I'm totally fine with that too, or some separate thing altogether. Or maybe something that works alongside with the texture that is that's already there, which is based on the just going to go back to that material for a second so I can remember what it is. If I go back to Pillar, Pillar is actually using Autodesk Interactive, right? Now the rendering mode is opaque. If I try and make it transparent, right, then maybe we can see it together with this other one. Now, notice I have this effect. If I go back to the selected effect and get rid of this, then a lot of times we'll still see the effect. Take a look. So we still see the shader now, or the texture that comes through. And it's selected. All right, so that's something that we want to do. Awesome. All right, so that is the selected effect. Again, it's not perfect, and it does some really weird stuff. You can find other ones online that do very similar stuff. But what if I want something to be X-rayed? Like I want to select something, and I want it to be visible no matter where I'm looking at it. That is the silhouette effect that I have in the other one. So let's add that in instead. So again, I'm going to go back to Materials. I'm going to go back to Silhouetted Effect Material. And that's the one I want to attach. I also can attach a texture and a bump map if I want to. Those two things are available. If I want to make my own, a different texture and a different bump map to add in, as an example, when I'm selecting it, or X-raying it if I want. I can also add a main color where I can color the entire thing so it looks like selected. The outline color is one thing, but I can tint the color of the object that I'm getting in if I want to make it look like it's completely selected, right? Same thing with the selected effect. Right now, the main color is no color, but I can select the color that I want to tint this object, okay? Okay, so let's go back and let's add that into the pillar. So back to pillar, this pillar number 1. I have the selected effect. Let's get rid of this one. So now we're back to normal. That's what it normally would look like. And let's add in the silhouetted effect instead. All right, so now you can immediately see what it does, right? It allows you to look at an object even through walls. So it gives you the ability to select something, and then as long as I can look at it from any direction. One thing it doesn't do is it doesn't give us a great outline, all right? So this does just the X-ray look. So I'm gonna look through something, and even if I go through the floor and look up, I can still see the object through walls, right, or whatever, whether it's occluded or not, I can still see it, right? And this is okay. And the reason why I've given you both, right, and notice it kind of didn't add in the texture in this case. So here's my texture, but it didn't allow the texture to come through. If I go to my silhouetted material, right, it didn't allow the texture to come through at all. I can change the outline, so I can make it bigger. You can see the look and feel down here. And if I want to, I can assign the same textures that I had before. So I can go into, here's my stone wall, put that back in. And you know what? Let's add a bump map in there as well, which is just a normal map. So to make it more reasonable. And I can change the, I can expose additional things in here so that the normal map doesn't look as rough as it looks right now. But one thing I can do is I want to make this, the selected part, as big as possible. Let's see if I can change the outline width to make it more. Well, even if I do, notice that it is really small, 0.03, and that is an effect of what the shader program allows us to do. It gives us a scale of 0 to 0.03. Not great in terms of how it's going to look here, right? Doesn't really look like anything. All right. So what if I want to make a change to that? So again, going back to shaders, if I want to go to my silhouetted outline shader and I want to change my slider, so instead of it stopping me at 0.3, let's go to 0.5. So really a lot more, right? And I want to set initially to 0.05, but I want to have a much bigger range. All right, so if I went to do that and I update it, it compiles the shader. And when I go back to my materials and I go to my silhouetted effect material, you can see now that I have a lot of range to go, and I can pull this way up until I can start seeing a bit of a selected effect. But really, the problem with this is it's not meant for this, right? It's meant for you to X-ray. That's what it's meant for you to do. So if I look through something, I can X-ray something and I can look at it. What about combining both? I want one and the other one. Let's go back to what it was before. So 0.03 is kind of the most I want to do. And what I want to do instead is I want to add both silhouetted effect, which is kind of an X-ray, and the selected effect, which is this border or the edge detection. Okay, I want to do that. So the way to do that would be if I go to my pillar and I add another one in there. So silhouetted effect is in there, but I also want to add in my selected effect, and now I have both. So you can have both effects going at the same time, right? Which is going to give me that the effect potentially that I want. I want to make it so that it is, as an example, highlighted, but it's also going to be selected. And remember, I can just turn these off and on depending on what I want to do. Tricky things to do would be, if you really want, if you only had one object that you can select every single time, right? Then, and again, you can see that this shader or shader group is not the best option, especially for, I find that the selected effect is not perfect. It really depends on your viewing angle, and there's probably some better shaders out there that do the same thing. I'm trying to save you guys a way of doing this without using a VFX graph or shader graph, and or using something that you download from the asset store. But doing something like this, selecting it, is the first part to saying, hey, I want to destroy this. I want to destroy this. So one thing I want to do is I want to be able to point to this thing with some kind of raycast, right? And remember, what we can do is we can have a little kind of reticle or whatever that is in the middle of my screen when I'm looking at an object. So when I'm in game, I want to have a reticle that's right here, let's say, that's inside of my object. And that reticle is kind of a representation of where my camera is looking at, okay? So let's do that in the canvas first. So in the canvas, I want to kind of go in there and add in I'm going to right click and go UI, and the easiest way to do that is text. So UI, text. And in the text area of the canvas, I want to just put in a plus. And again, you can make this as simple as you want. You can make it an image, like a circle, if you want, or an O. Again, lowercase o would be fine as well, right? An O. And the image, which is the, again, if I go back to my canvas, you can see what it looks like. Let's go into 2D mode again. There's the O. We want this thing to be centered. Again, it's easier for us to deal with the canvas element when the object we're looking at is in 2D. It's much easier. What I want is for this to be centered. So this, you got to click on the center. Also is center, right? We don't care about what this thing is. We know that the screen is centered, right? So it's the center anchor is what we want, okay? For the reticle. Maybe what we want is, instead of the color being what it is, we want to change the color to a color we can see, like white, as an example. So again, I can choose, right now it's black, I can move it to white, so I can always see the reticle, right? And if I go back to my game, you can see a little circle as an example. If you don't like the circle, you can go back and to change this to a plus, which is kind of like a little target. All right, it doesn't have to be very big. It just has to give some indication of where I'm looking. So when I play the game, then wherever I'm looking at is the thing that I can target, right? And what I want to do is they're coming at me. I want to be able to, when I'm looking at an object, right, I want to raycast from the center of where I'm looking at it, right, my transform forward, I want to raycast, and that's going to be kind of my line of sight, how far I want to go, right? So again, I don't recommend very far, maybe something like 100 or 200 max, I would say, that you're going to raycast from the center of your screen. And that's going to be something that is how you're going to kind of look. Some tricks you can use, you can change the color of this when it collides with the raycast hit in order for you to kind of make this work. And we already have a script we can use. If I go to scripts, and if I go to player behavior, we can definitely add it in here. It's not that big of a deal, where every frame, what I'm doing is I'm raycasting. So I have a physics check sphere. I can also do a raycast. So let's just do that. So I'll say var, and I'm going to see what I've selected or touched. We'll say touched, right, is equal to, again, physics.raycast, right? And what I want to do is, it gives me a few things. The origin and the direction is really all I need, and the maximum distance. So this one is what I want to use, this one here. Maximum distance. right? So origin, direction, maximum distance. My origin is my transform position. My direction is transform forward. Now again, we got to be careful about this because my transform forward might be different than my camera, right? So it might be the camera that I want here instead of me, the actual character. This is the character, not the camera. But let's put transform dot forward, so where I'm pointing basically. Now this is going to point directly forward from my character, not my camera. All right. And let's say the distance is a floating point number of, let's say, 100. I also want to visualize this. So I want to do a debug.drawLine. We can also use, instead of debug.drawLine, gizmos again. And we have some gizmos available to us. We have a draw gizmo. So remember, I can do debug.drawLine, or if I want to see it inside of the editor to see approximately where it's going, I can do that. I can say, hey, let's do a gizmos.drawLine, right? And I want to draw from, my transform dot position to my, and I want to add my transform dot forward, and then multiply that by 100, right? So that's kind of where it's going to be, right, approximately, and it's going to be this white color. So what that looks like is in the inspector, when I go back into the editor and I drag into my player, this is why it's important to visualize what's happening, right? And that's why I'm drawing it up here. You can see what this is looking at, right? This is looking from the center of my player forward. I don't want this to look from the center of my player. Rather, I'd want this to look from the center of my camera forward. So wherever this is looking. And that makes more sense than the center of my player. So, and again, I'll finish after this, guys. I know I'm running over time. Just bear with me. But the visualization is important to see where it's looking. So you know this is wrong, okay? So, so let's get my camera. So does my player have access to my camera right now? I've got my ground check, my controller, and all this kind of stuff, but I don't have access to my camera. Let's do that. So let's go header, and we'll say for selection, right? We're going to use the selection area, selection properties. I want my camera. So I want my public. Now, do I need my camera or my camera's transform? Just the camera's transform is what I need. So transform camera. But what I need to do is I can't just do transform camera unless I drag and drop. I mean, I can do that if I'm really lazy. Instead of finding my camera that's inside of my my game object, I can just drag and drop. I'm just going to drag and drop because we're running out of time, but you can certainly find it in the same techniques we used last time, right? So again, I'm going to go to my player, and notice I have my camera, which is my the thing I want to use. And again, I could rename this. Instead of camera, I want this to be my player camera, just to be clear what camera I'm looking at, the player camera, right? So the player, when they're linking this up again, just has to do one of these, right? Player cam. So now that I have my player camera and it's the transform that I care about, it's the player camera transforms forward that I want. So instead of touched being from my transform position to my transform forward, it's my camera dot transform dot my camera dot position, because camera is player camera dot position. So that's transform dot position, and my player transform dot camera player dot forward, player camera dot forward is what I'm looking at, and about 100 units forward. And to visualize this, then we can draw a line. So it's going to be my player camera dot position and my player camera dot forward. So you can see the difference between one and the other. And now when you visualize, it looks a lot different. This is what's happening. And wherever my camera is looking is where the raycast is happening. So that's the first thing. So wherever I'm looking, if I'm looking up here And you can see if I go back to my scene, that where is the camera looking? Well, it's looking like way up here. And so that's where this line is going. It's going way up here. It's looking way up here, right? Okay, cool. So what I want is for this to basically, when I'm colliding with something, this touched gives me a, has it been hit or not, right? But we can also cast it as a ray cast hit, right? So you can say something like, and again, I'm just doing it here, but you can do it any way you want. I can say this is a ray cast hit. That's what touched is, right? Now, funny enough, this tells me if I've touched something or not, right? Because physics.raycast returns a Boolean, okay? So how do I make it so it's a raycast hit instead of a raycast, right? So let me undo that change. So what is the thing for that? So if I type in physics.ray, there's raycast all, right? Raycast, again, it depends on, notice that I'm getting all these different things. Ray, here's my ray, and then I'm getting a Boolean, right? So I can do a raycast, and I'm passing in the ray, right? That's something I can do, right? Passing in the ray itself. Do I have the ray though? If I go touched, it's just a Boolean, right? So I can compare the stuff that I'm getting, right? So that's what I'm getting, physics.raycast. How else can I do it? You guys are with me. So how else can I get the ray as opposed to a Boolean? I don't want the Boolean. This just says if I'm colliding with something, right? How do I get the raycast hit though? So what if I just start typing raycast? So if I type ray, what is a ray? Or I want to get a raycast hit, right? So how do I do a ray or a raycast hit, right? How do I do raycasting in the first place? Well, let's look up the Unity stuff. We'll go into Unity. I'll say raycast Unity. And what does it do? It gives me my physics.raycast, and it'll give me a little bit of code. All right? So it says if physics.raycast, but we have a raycast hit ahead of time, right? We did the debug.drawRay here, but I want to do something else entirely, right? So raycast, it does a Boolean, but we can also not just have the transform direction, which is the vector forward, but also what it's going to hit and the hit that comes out. So we can change what's happening. Map.infinity is how far we want to go, right? So that's something else we can do. Let's just lift this code. So raycast, I'm going to kind of copy that and go back to here. Okay, so raycast hit. And now when I redo this thing, so I'm going to copy paste. I want to say this is going to be if, like it says here, if I raycast hit, right? This is where it's going to be. This is nice, but instead of this kind of raycast, I want to keep some of the same things, but there are other overloads, right? There are other overloads, and if you notice here, it says I can put in the transform position, transform direction, as well as the out, right? So you can see that the out is the what I want. So out hit, followed by, and now I'm into another overload, followed by the max distance, which is 100. And I don't care what I hit. This is still a Boolean, right? But I'm passing in the information out into the hit. Okay. And I can say if it hits, I'm hitting something, but I want to debug.log. I want to debug.log that hit.point, right? Whatever that hit point is, or that hit dot, and notice it says there are some other things. I can get the name of the object that I'm hitting, right? Remember, we've done this kind of before, right? Where I want to get what I'm hitting. I can look at the collider, I can look at the point that I'm hitting, And then the game object of the point that I'm hitting, that's where it is. So point is a vector3 object. So what I'm hitting, the location that I'm hitting, that's cool. And I can also do other things. What else can I do? I can get the transform of the hit. How about the game object name of the transform that I'm hitting? Okay, I've done this before. So let's output this. So again, back to what we're doing, back to the object. And if I run it again, so you can see that I'm getting tile 2, there's tile 1, and now I'm hitting the pillar. See that? Pillar 1. So depending on what I'm hitting, right, if the name of the object is pillar, right, because I'm getting the name of the object, that's coming out, outbound, right? So if the name of the object hit the transform to game object name, or I can compare tag, whatever you want, whichever one you want, right? Once I have the transform available to me, I can do a lot of things with this, right? Then what I want to do is I want to select, I want to change I want to get information about the thing I'm looking at. So again, whatever the name of the object is, but that game object itself, right, is really what I want. I really don't care about the name. I want the game object. I want to find the material, the renderer of the game object that I want to access. And when I'm touching it, I want to add 2 materials to the transform, to the materials, right? So, and when I'm not touching it, if I'm not touching it, or when I stop touching it, right? When I move away from it, I want to deselect it. I want to select and deselect it. Okay, so that's kind of the way I'm doing with a raycast, right? So again, going back to the object, let's look at what it looks like in Unity. Let's stop this. And if I go back to my pillar, right, any pillar, this one, with the effect on it, let's get rid of these 2 materials. So I have only one material that's there, right? The material number is 1. I have the pillar material. There it is. When I click onto it, I want let's just do a couple things, make it easy. Let's just change I want to take the material from the mesh renderer. So the mesh renderer's material, I want to get access to the mesh renderer and go to the material and change it. Okay. So I want to get the mesh render of the game object. So my game object dot get component mesh renderer, right? I can't do material. I can't do this, right? Because material is going to be, it's not just one thing. I mean, I could, but it's going to get components material, right? If I really want to. But if I do material, right? So get component material, and I want to swap it out with something else, right? Then this material is the thing that I want to change to something else. So I'll say that var material is equal to this material. I got a reference now to this material, and I want to point it to another material. So let's suppose that I have my selection material, public material. We'll call this the selectable, right? And then in my player script, I can take the material that I have, which let's say, for example, is the selected effect material. There it is, my selectable. And what I want to say is I want to swap it out. So hit the transform to game object that's the material, right? And I want to say that material, which is a reference now, because this is what this is. It says this is the material. What if I wanted to make it the selectable, right? Can I do that? Can it swap out like that? And by the way, you can chain this as well. You don't have to even use a game object, right? So anything I kind of hit, it's going to swap it out with my selectable. And that means anything I do, right? Anything I have altogether. And it says, well, it's not really doing it. And if I check to see what I'm doing, so if I look at my pillar 1, which is this pillar, you can see that it's still material, right? So this didn't really work. But what if the renderer, which is the mesh renderer? What other things can I do with it? Mesh renderer, right? If I get the mesh renderer, can I get the material from that? Mesh renderer dot material, right? And we can do it in one. We don't need even to hold this reference. We can just say that the material, instead of whatever I'm looking at, the mesh render material, that's going to be equal to selectable. Is that something I can do? Well, that means I'm going to turn everything I look at into that, right? So anything I look at will change, and you can see it's working already, right? Now it says one thing. It says, see how it changed? Selected effect material. It says missing component exception. There's no mesh renderer in some of the objects, right? Mesh render only exists in some things, but not other things. That's why it's giving me that component exception, right? But you can see that some things light up. Look at that. So and it actually changed all the colors because I've changed them all to my new selected material, my selected effect. All right, my custom outliner, my custom shader. Look at that. Right, so it actually changed them all. So that is definitely a way of doing it where I want to swap out the material. One thing to note is, I'm just going to go back to this so you can see it. The selected effect material is by default outlines width is this, and you can see what the outline width looks like is 0.13, right? As an example, I can make this bigger at the cost of what it's going to look like when I outline it, and sometimes I can't see it because I've changed everything. By the way, by this time I've changed everything to that material, even my my other objects. So for example, tile with stairs, I'm trying to change tile with stairs, but tile with stairs doesn't have a mesh renderer, right? So that's why I can't change the material. But my tile that's underlying, I have changed. So to make this effect more glaring, selected effect material, let's also change the main color tint to something that looks like it's orange. So again, I'm going to grab the same values, and let's also tint the object itself to that material. All right, so it's going to be orange when I kind of get into it. That's what's going to the effect is going to be. Let's see if that works. If I kind of look at an object and then, yeah, look at that. It just changed everything that I point to orange. Anything that I can see kind of selects to make it orange, everything, right? Because I can change the effect. So that's some way of changing the material as well. I'm changing the entire material, even objects that don't even have a material. It doesn't go back to the normal one, right? I have to, if I'm not raycasting, I got to have a way of getting the material that I changed. And when I'm not, so the hit itself, there's some tricks we have to make. So I'm selecting the material, and once it's selected, I want to grab, I want to do two things. I want to save the material that I changed, right? Whatever that is, and then swap it back, right? So I want to create a way of doing that. I also don't want to be so crazy, right? This is like everything I'm changing. Let's just change only the things that are pillars, right? And again, and this is the last thing we'll do before we stop. If I go to pillar, right now it says pillar. The other one says pillar 1, but there's no tag, right? So what I can do is I can tag something that's selectable. So I can add a tag. Let's make a new tag called selectable, right? I think I spelled it right. And then go into my pillars and change them to selectable. So only the ones that are selectable are the ones that I can hit. So I can say, and we can break this down a little bit more. So I can say hit.transform.gameObject.compare tag to selectable, right? If that's the truth. And again, you can also arrange for you not to do this. So if it's a hit and if the transform game object selectable is selectable, only then do we want to swap out the material. So I can hold on to this object. I can create a variable for this. So I don't have to re-search, because this is like selecting it again, like actually getting this material again and again, right? So if I do this, just by this little check here, now it's only going to select the objects that are selectable. So the other objects in the scene, again, I'm not going to error out, but as soon as I target that one, it becomes selectable. Look at that. So I turned it on, and now it's got the selected effect, right? But on the enemies, it's not going to do that. If I go to the other object in the scene that is a pillar, and I kind of zero in on it, if it's close enough, then now that's selectable too, right? There it is. It's hard to see because of the lighting, but it's selectable. There we are. All right, so that's the way to do it. And you can swap out the different kinds of effects that you want by changing the material type that you want as well. All right, now what about getting it back, like you said? So if it's not hitting that, whatever I hit before, we want to track. So I want to kind of get a reference to that and then swap it back. So if it's not hitting, then the object itself, which is the selectable object, can have a script that says, I want to go back. If I'm not being hit by the ray, it's going to turn itself back to the regular material, whatever the material is. Okay. So again, each of the pillars can have a little script that does that. Okay, I'm timed out. I don't want to go further than this, but this is kind of a mechanism that I've given you that you can use to to select objects that you can see. Right. Again, if you want to make this much longer, so 200 as an example, you can do that too. Let's see what it looks like when it's farther away, to give you an example of what that looks like. So again, I'm looking kind of in the middle, and then as I look towards here, boom, it turns on, right? And then if I look away, it's supposed to turn off. It doesn't because I don't have that mechanism. But now, even far away, that ray will turn on the material that I want to select. And so I can give feedback to the user that that thing has been selected. All right. All right, that's it for this one. So for the lab, I've given you a couple of things to help you. I did outline silhouette shader. We talked about this, how to do that. You can download a shader. We did the raycast hit, and we did the swapping out of the material, which I wanted to show you. This is part of in-game object selection. We've still got some extra work to do, but I think this gives you a lead on how to make this work without using some kind of download to fatten up our project from the asset store. That's the point here. Okay, that's it for me for today. Any questions around the stuff that we wanted to accomplish today? All right, guys, thank you so much for sticking around. I know we went overtime. Thank you so much. Good luck on your submission. Remember that what's due on Sunday, again, is your second playable release. That's due Sunday at midnight. Good luck for that. And next week, we're going to do a checkpoint. I'm going to release a schedule of slots that you guys can sign up to. And when you do, we'll go in that slot order. Otherwise, that's it for me. I'm going to stop recording on YouTube. Thank you so much. All right, I'm going to put this up on GitHub as well for you guys.